All right, let's talk about one of the biggest anxieties for anyone who speaks in public. Those little words, you know, and ah. We've all spent so much energy trying to get rid of them. But what if I told you you've been looking at this all wrong? I mean, this is the big question, right? For as long as we've been learning to speak, whether it's for a presentation or in a new language, the advice has always been the same. Filler words are bad. They're a sign you're nervous, that you're not prepared, a flaw you have to cut out. But is that really the whole story? Yeah, it's a message we've all had drilled into us. Public speaking coaches, teachers, they all tell us to aim for this perfectly smooth, flawless speech. The idea is that a clean delivery equals a confident speaker. But today, we're going to push back on that big time. Because here's the surprising part. Those little fillers, when you use them the right way, can actually make you a better, more relatable speaker. It's not about being perfect. It's about sounding like a real human being. This really gets to the heart of it. Just think about it for a second. Have you ever listened to someone who speaks like a perfectly programmed robot? There are no mistakes, but it feels cold, right? Distant. Natural speech, the way we actually talk to each other, is full of these tiny little imperfections. And that's what makes it feel warm and authentic. And those small fillers are doing some really important work. They send a signal to the person listening that you're actively thinking, that you're putting your thoughts together right then and there. It's this subtle cue that says, hey, this is a real conversation, not just me reading a script. Honestly, native speakers use them all the time without even thinking about it. So if they're not mistakes, then what are they? Well, let's start treating them like a tool. We're going to look at how you can turn these things you thought were flaws into a really effective part of how you communicate. So first off, let's just redefine what we're talking about here. A filler word in this context is not a mistake. It's a strategic pause. Think of it like a little sound bridge you build to get from one idea to the next, so the whole conversation doesn't just fall into a dead, awkward silence while you're trying to figure out what to say next. So here's the game plan, and it's pretty simple. First, fillers buy you some thinking time, just a second or two for your brain to catch up with your mouth. Second, they help you skip over those really uncomfortable silences and just keep the flow going. And third, and this is a fantastic little pro tip, a quick can act like a little drum roll, telling your audience, okay, listen up, something important is coming. Okay, now this is really, really important. We're not saying you should start throwing and like into every other word. That's not the goal. Like any tool, the secret is knowing when to use it and how much. It is all about finding that sweet spot. Because, let's be real, there's a definite risk here. If you overuse fillers, you get the total opposite effect. Instead of sounding natural, you just sound kind of messy and unprepared. What we're aiming for is strategic, intentional use. So the goal is to use them lightly, like a little bit of seasoning in a dish. The trap is when they become a habit that pops up in every single sentence. And that's the difference between a thoughtful pause and just a verbal tick. When it comes right down to it, this isn't just about a speaking technique. It's about changing your entire mindset. It's about moving from that feeling of panic to a feeling of poise and, control. Think about that moment when your mind just goes completely blank. We've all been there. The old way is to panic, right? You freeze up. The new way, you take a breath and you use a calm, controlled or You're not stopping. You're just navigating a turn. You are still in the driver's seat. And that's the real payoff. You give yourself permission to think.
So instead of that panic spiral, you use a natural pause to stay in the conversational flow. Keep your momentum and just keep moving forward with confidence. It's a total game changer.
If you only take one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this right here. Change how you see these words. They aren't mistakes you should be ashamed of. They are tools in your toolbox, and you can learn to use them with purpose and skill. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. What if that one thing you've been fighting so hard against, that little habit you thought was your biggest weakness, what if you could actually transform it? What if, with just a little shift in how you see it, you could turn it into one of your greatest strengths for sounding authentic, relatable, and totally human?